So the morning of April 6th, when I woke up, I had noticed over the weekend that Shepherd had his very first runny nose. And I looked at him and thought, gosh, I'd love to stay home today. But I knew I couldn't. And I thought to myself, moms with babies with runny noses go to work. So I did. And I had messaged my child care provider about my rock and play, and she just told me to bring it. So I walked into her house that morning with my car seat and the rock and play, and she took one look at that rock and play and said, I can't use that. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, DHS won't let me use anything but a firm, flat surface. And I was like, but my doctor, he told me to put my older son in this. I'm sure it's safe. And she goes, I don't know. And I said, well, what if I got you a doctor's note? And she's like, well, I'd have to call my caseworker. And I said, okay. And I looked at his car seat and I said, well, what about his car seat? And she started to tear up. She started to cry. And I was misty-eyed too. And I just looked at her because I didn't understand why she was crying. And she said, no car seats, no swings. It's not safe. And I said, swings aren't safe? And she said, no, that's what DHS told me. I was just, I had tears coming out of my eyes, and I was unpacking my diaper bag. And I noticed that I had forgotten Shepherd's bottles. They were at home in my refrigerator. So I looked at her and with, a shrug, and I said, I left my bottles at home. I have to go home. I'll be back in just a minute. I only live 2 miles away. So I went home and I grabbed the bottles and I grabbed my Ergo baby carrier, which she had used before. And I thought, well, she can't use my rock and play and she can't use can't use a swing. At least she could wear Shepherd. And Shepherd loved to be held by anyone. And so I knew that she'd have 2 hands free and she wouldn't have to worry about him at all, and neither would I. And so I thought it was a perfect solution. So I got back and I said, here are the bottles, here's my Ergo. And I said, I've already called my doctor. He's gonna call me back and I'll fax you the note if I need to. And she said, that's fine. I said, have you talked to your caseworker? And she said, no, I haven't. I go, call her. And then that's when I kissed Shepherd for the very last time on his forehead, and I just said, bye, baby. So I was already very late for my 8 o'clock meeting. I got to my meeting about 8:40 that morning, and my phone rang about 9:15. It was my doctor's nurse. And I stepped out of the meeting, I took her call, and she said, are you standing by your fax machine? I'm faxing you the note right now. And I said, sure. And so stood by the fax machine, got my fax, and I texted her. I said, I have the note. Don't worry. Do you need me to bring it by? And she said no. Finished up my meeting, I just returned to work. It was only my 6th day, so I was doing the normal, just straightening things, making sure I was organized, making sure I wasn't forgetting anything, and then I left the office to go to my first patient. She lived out east of Shawnee, Earlsboro, and it was 12:51 when my phone rang. And I saw her name flash across my caller ID, and I picked it up, and a cheerful voice said, hi, what's going on? And she said, Allie, get here quick. Shepherd's not breathing. And I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? What happened? And she said, I don't know. I put him down for a nap and now he's not breathing. I remember that moment so well because I remember the first thought that came into my head was, I've lost him. But then I immediately talked myself out of it and said I was overreacting. And I said, who's there with you? Who's there? and she said, there are 2 paramedics and a police officer. The paramedics just got here. And I said, you hand the phone to the paramedic and you tell him that his mom's a health professional and she wants to talk to him. He kindly got on the phone. He wouldn't confirm vital signs. He wouldn't tell me why he wasn't transporting. He wouldn't answer any of my questions. He said, "Ma'am, I need to get off the phone so I can work on your son." I said, "Okay." I was probably an hour or so away. So I knew I was way, way too far away to get there in any sort of time. So I immediately started calling my husband over and over and over again until he finally picked up. He was in the middle of teaching class. He's definitely not used to me doing that. And when he answered the phone, all I could get out was leave. You have to leave. Shepard's not breathing. You have to get to the daycare right now. I'm too far away. I can't get there. You have to get there. Derek got there just in time to get tackled by a police officer that said he couldn't go inside, that they were still working on Shepard. Shortly after, they wheeled Shepard out on a stretcher. Derek had to ride in a van all the way to the hospital by himself. I met them at the hospital. No mom should drop their kid off at daycare and pick them up at the hospital. So that's what I mean when I say that I'm so glad, I'm so terribly glad that you're here and that you think that safe sleep is important enough to stop, to take extra time away from your family to come here and make sure that you understand why. Not just that you're not supposed to put babies in swings, or you're not supposed to put them in car seats, or you're not supposed to put them anywhere but a firm, flat surface, but you understand why you don't. The why would have saved Shepard's life that day. She'd been warned 10 days before by DHS never to use a car seat to sleep for infants. And she did it anyway because she didn't believe it. She'd never been through a 2-hour formal course. She didn't have to. And I'm very honored to have this time with you tonight, so that you never have a story to tell like mine. Yet we didn't really know how Shepard was found, or why he died. It was only after the fact at the hospital I realized I hadn't even asked. And so it was when DHS was at my house investigating us, and I asked, I said, was he in his rock and play? Was he in his pack and play? What happened? And she said he was in a car seat. And I said, what was he doing in a car seat? I had a doctor's note for a rock and play. We'd had that conversation. And then even later, we found out that he was swaddled. So that he was swaddled, unbuckled, in a car seat, left in a room with the door closed, with no monitor, no supervision for 2 hours. And he had just wiggled down until his chin touched his chest and his airway collapsed. Something as a mom, I'll never get over. I'll carry this guilt for the rest of my life, is I wanted to pick a good place for my son. I wanted to protect him while I was at work. And it was choices that my child care provider made that resulted in my child's death. It seems so small. You swaddle babies. I can't tell you how many parents have come up to me, I let my children sleep in car seats and they're fine. How, why did yours die? Why did mine not? And I don't have a lot for them other than the fact that they were lucky. And honestly, if Shepherd had been buckled in, he'd still be here. If maybe she had put him in the living room with her so she could watch him, he'd probably still be here. If he hadn't been swaddled, maybe he'd still be here. So any one of those things could have caused Shepherd's death. Shepherd's death was preventable. He didn't die of sudden infant death syndrome. That's something else I always try to make clear in this training, is that while SIDS exists, it's incredibly rare. But most SIDS deaths, especially before 2 or 3 years ago, the estimates are as high as 90% are completely preventable. Shepherd falls in the 90%. You're here tonight to learn about the 90%. Shepherd's Watch was something that I started July of 2015. It was meant to solely make sure that Shepherd's story or anything like it never happened again. So I thought if people could come to the Shepherd's Watch website on Facebook, they could read his story. I regularly post articles that are educational for both child care providers and parents to provide new and upcoming information on what's safe and provide free and accessible education that way.